Bob Chapman spent 3 years in U.S. Army counterintelligence, mostly in Europe. He speaks German and French and is conversant in Spanish. He lived in Europe for 6 years off and on, 3 years in Africa, a year in Canada, and a year in the Bahamas. For more than 4 decades, Bob has been writing articles on business, finance, economics, and politics for more than 200 publications. He is owner and editor of the International Forecaster, a compendium of information on business, finance, economics, and social and political issues worldwide, which every month reaches 10,000 investors and brokers directly and is picked up by 60 different websites weekly, exposing his ideas to over 10 million people each week. He has spoken at or given workshops to over 200 business conferences worldwide and has been on radio and TV literally hundreds of times. He's been with us before and, God willing, will be with us again in the future. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the Global Freedom Report Mr. Bob Chapman. Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm fine and ready to go. Excellent.
The big news involves violent uprisings throughout Egypt. Reports indicate the royal family has fled to England. The country is in lockdown mode. The Internet has been effectively shut down to Egyptians. Communications with the outside world have been interrupted. In short, reports indicate it's a mess. However, I spoke with our Saudi Arabian correspondent yesterday. He suggested the entire affair may have been orchestrated. Apparently, most high-ranking Egyptian officials were in Washington when this all started. What are your impressions of the current state of affairs in Egypt?
First of all, I agree with your Saudi Arabian contact. I think this is another operation run by the Central Intelligence Agency and MI6. And I think the reason for both Tunisia as well as Egypt is to create a distraction. And the distraction would be away from the municipal and state problems in the United States, the difficulty of funding the U.S. deficit by the Federal Reserve, and also the problems that are in Europe among the 6 countries that are in financial trouble, and also an upcoming surprising Irish election, which may throw everything upside down. This change was in the works for some time. You could tell that by the movement of gold by Mubarak out of the country. He stole about $20 billion. And, of course, in Tunisia, the dictator and his wife took about a ton and a half of gold. And so obviously gold is the important thing to these people. And I think that they, in Washington and London, were willing to sacrifice unsettling circumstances in Egypt and in Tunisia. And as well, there's been demonstrations in Albania and Jordan and Yemen, and this thing could spread.
Well, and yeah, go on, please.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was curious. You mentioned MI6 and CIA, but not Mossad?
No, Mossad could have been. But they've been very quiet, and usually they'd have something to say on the order of, well, what's going to replace these people? Even though Mubarak was a dictator, he worked hand in hand with Israel. And now the U.S. may have lost their control connections in these areas. And I would have thought they would have said something like that, but they said nothing. And to me, that means that they probably knew all about it, but they were probably told, look, you're going to get taken care of. Just stand by. We don't want you in this. And the reason we don't want you in is we don't want you exposed.
You mentioned Tunisia, and the recent uprising in Tunisia seems to have been the spark of these protests all throughout the Arab world. Egypt, you mentioned Yemen, Algeria, Albania, Jordan, Ivory Coast, which I'm thinking might be even a separate issue, Ivory Coast, but and even Iraq. Is this a trend? Have people finally gotten so fed up with government corruption and taking matters into their own hands, or is this all related? Is this some kind of domino effect? And if so, doesn't that seem like going real far for that distraction you mentioned?
Well, no, because it's more important that the people don't know about what's going on about a more important issue, which is the finances of the Western world. I mean, what goes on in the Middle East, they don't care. They haven't cared for over 100 years. I mean, the people around Saudi Arabia were a bunch of bandits before they made a deal with England and then the United States. And if you could go back and look at the history of Lawrence of Arabia, you'll find out that that's true. But the main thing here is they don't care. If you've noticed in Egypt, the military as well as the police are really fraternizing now with the demonstrators to a great extent. I saw pictures of everyday citizens riding on top of tanks. So whether that's universal or not remains to be seen. But I think there's going to be a change. And what will happen after that? Confusion, elections. The U.S. is hoping that they get the Muslim Brotherhood and some other established organizations to run the country, and things will pass.
Well, but do you think there's some kind of a trend? Yemen, Algeria, Albania, Jordan, all that, or do you think somehow they're connected?
Oh, they're all connected.
So
the question is how far the U.S. and Great Britain want to take them.
So you think all of this, even Tunisia, is part of an orchestration, basically?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's amazing.
The minute I saw it, that's what I thought. And I've been studying these things for years, and I've lived in some of those places.
Yeah, no,
I even lived in North Africa because it's... What's that?
This is why I wanted to ask you about this, for exactly that reason. That's amazing. Since we don't have a lot of time, we've got so much to talk to you about. There's a second, almost as important issue that is floating here. Recently, there has been it seems to have been picked up on everything but mainstream news and all the so-called freedom broadcasts and all that. A story that Obama is handing pieces of America through what's called free trade zones over to the Chinese, who will be able to operate with impunity. American law won't apply, the whole thing. Now, we did a little bit of spot investigating, and it appears this whole incident started with an off-cuff comment by broadcaster Jack McGlann that somebody picked up on and made a story out of, and there doesn't seem to be anything corroborating it. But it's been reported on by Dr. Jerome Corsi. Now Gerald Celente has stepped into the mix. Do you know anything about this one way or the other?
The only thing I know is what Phyllis Shapley put out, and that's the Eagles Forum. And I've known of the Eagles Forum since the mid-1960s. And I have not known of them to put out bogus information before.
No, actually,
and
she has not put this out. Her name is being bandied about. But as far as we can tell, and I've got a direct line into her, I'm waiting for a response, but as far as we can tell, she has disassociated herself with the story, as far as I could tell.
Well, then that changes everything. As they say in French, ça change tout alors. And so maybe it is untruthful. We'll find out in time, but I really don't know.
Okay, that is fair. To another part of the world, European ministers and African officials have expressed concerns at the onset of food riots. The result has been a boon to U.S. food exports. Do you believe there's anything insidious about this?
Could be, but I don't think so. I mean, we're having terrible things happen throughout the world, like in Argentina, the wheat crop is down. We had a terrible drought in Australia, and now they're all flooded out. It's not funny, but, you go from one hand to the other. And so there are shortages throughout the world. I mean, the price of food has been going up about 50%, or doubling, here just in the last 7 or 8 months, and it's continuing to do so. And it's not only in food, it's in cotton and copper and in other things as well. And part of that is probably caused by a flight to quality, people who are leaving the bond market and the stock market going into commodities as well as gold and silver. And so that movement has been going on. It probably will continue. And that means that food prices will probably go higher. And when that happens, people on the periphery of the world, so to speak, people like in Ivory Coast or in Ghana or perhaps in Brazil, are having trouble getting food at a reasonable price.